are these people?
As he has so many powerful people. But anyway, I have some more for this evening. Hopefully you can speak a little bit to this. I know it's almost the opposite of where your world is. But I'm sure you kind of followed up with it because water protectors tend to focus on other water protectors protecting water. But emptying the Navy's Red Hill jet fuel tanks need not take 2 years. So you heard anything about this stuff that happened in Hawaii?
Yeah, I know the constituent talks about it in the chat once in a while.
Yeah,
that's generally where I get the info from it.
Yeah,
but it's like, once again, it's appalling, and they just make excuses why they can't do it.
Right.
It's like, no, you can do it.
Yes.
Just do it.
Yep.
Stop being little bitches.
Pretty much. So this is from Ann Wright over at Pop Resistance. So the above photo is fuel trucks that can move 100 million gallons of jet fuel in 27 days. So that's these trucks here, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with, these kinds of trucks, especially here in the United States and near you specifically. I mean, how much do they move petroleum based through where you live? Like loads?
Quite a bit.
Like,
well, we do
right
a lot of pipelines.
Yeah.
We have pipelines.
Right.
But we do have a lot of trucks up here anyways.
I know. So I know a few of them that truck through that sands region, you know? Mm-hmm. But anyway, so they're saying that these could be moved in 27 days, right? So 10 days ago, late on a Friday afternoon on the 27th, the contractor's assessment of the repairs needed in the U.S. Navy's Red Hill jet fuel storage area was delivered to the Hawaii's Department of Health. The redacted report, made available to the public, shed light on how badly managed and maintained the massive 80-year-old 20-storage tank, 250 million gallon facility located a mere 100 feet above Honolulu's water supply had begun. So, I mean, we already know that this contaminated that, yes? If I'm not mistaken?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, yeah. On Hawaii's water supply. Honolulu.
Yeah, it's bad enough they already took the land from them. Let's poison them out, too.
On literally the place that almost every American would say we are trying to keep as natural as possible.
Yeah.
Like, you know, unless they want to buy a condo there. In fact, according to the report, the November 2021 jet fuel leak that went into Pearl Harbor's residential Red Hills drinking water well was just one of many dangerous time bombs in the facility waiting to happen. The 1.45 million Simpson, Gumpertz, and Hedger Inc. contracted report underscores that there were many near misses with potentially even greater disasters from the May and November leak spills from the large jet fuel tank system. Prior to the November 2021 leak, a testimony revealed in the February of 2021 contested hearing on Red Hill, earlier studies by the Navy itself had estimated that the Red Hill tanks had a 27.6 chance of leaking between 1,000 and 30,000 gallons in the next year. So 80.1 in the next 5 years, 96% in the next 10 years, and a 99.8% chance in the next 20 years. Man, like disinfectants can't even do that. Like 8 active jet fuel tanks have not been inspected for over 20 years, and tank 3 was last inspected 38 years ago.
That's appalling.
Is it not? Like,
yeah.
You know, they talk about nuclear facilities being unsafe, right? You know, and like, this is just jet fuel, which what are they even using that for in that kind of quantity?
Yeah.
You know, in Hawaii, no less. Like, I mean, are they refining it at, like, that to me is the most refined, yes? Jet fuel, I would imagine. So. Like, it's the cream of the crop. But like, to me,
I imagine they're going to use Hawaii as a jump off base.
Yeah, for sure. Like we always have. I mean, there's a reason why we fought for that island to begin with. And it's because it's so close to those other islands that have oil and petroleum and whatever. Right. We fought a whole theater over that shit. But
Did
like
you
all
know
those,
Hawaii actually had electricity before the White House?
I could see that.
Before America invaded and fucked it up.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So prior to the old Sandwich Islands, prior to the November 2021 leak, right? We read that. But I did want to point out, like, look, a nuclear facility, if you didn't inspect it in 38 years, that's going to be some problem, right? And you know why they don't do that? The problems are much more immediate. This, you don't inspect those things for 38 years, it might have the same amount of problem. You're talking about a similar amount of power being generated off this material. So, like if that suddenly went up for any reason,
that's a lot of.
That's a huge explosion. You want to talk about, do you remember not that recently ago, and I'm trying to remember where it was. It was in some Middle Eastern country where they had all that, those nitrites explode.
Okay, no, I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was a gigantic explosion of like, and they were improperly storing nitrites, which are like fertilizers, right? So, and that just, giant powder keg essentially, blew up loads of the city essentially. Luckily, it was just like mainly the, dock facilities, like near the shipping, whatever. I forget what I want to say. It was like Turkey maybe, or like, something weird like that. Istanbul, maybe some weird European, Middle Eastern place. I can't quite remember. Lebanon.
I'm not really sure if they're weird.
Lebanon, I think it might have been. I can't remember for shit. But anyway, heard on Lebanon. Hey, look at that. August 4th, 2020, Beirut. Yeah, I remember that. My dad deals with nitrates a lot, so, and like other dangerous compounds such as, like your buttholes can't be clenched enough when you're dealing with liquid oxygen in the lots of gallons, But the Navy's own contractors came up with 200 recommendations for repair work to be done on the Red Hills tanks and 3.5-mile pipe system before defueling the giant partially filled tanks can begin, and would take 2 years. 2 years on stuff that hasn't been inspected in how long? 38? Right? So they say 2 years we can, we got to build a pipe, like we got to open a valve. That's going to take a while. And these are partially filled tanks. They're not even full. And this is just the time they're saying that they can, like, I guess make new tanks and move it. Right? So the cost annex that detailed the undoubtedly hundreds of millions of dollars needed to make the repairs was not provided to the public. The danger to Honolulu's aquifer from fuel leaking from tanks exists now. Citizens of Oahu cannot wait for 2 years for massive repairs to the tank farm and pipe system before removing the fuel, when there are cheaper and faster alternatives to the probable extraordinarily expensive massive repairs called for by the report. Public trust in the Navy is very low, with many feeling that the Navy will slow roll the shutting down of Red Hill and use national security, continue operation of the Red Hill facility, and imperil the remainder of Honolulu's water supply. Right. So they're wanting to not only, you're supposed to trust this pipe storage system, right? Pipe system, before removing the fuel when they're a cheaper, right? So it's like, yeah, and they're not trusting the Navy, which if anyone shouldn't trust the Navy, it's this set of islands. So Pop Resistance, and particularly this author, wants to give an alternate defueling option. The 100 million gallons of jet fuel in the tanks does not need to be piped down from the Red Hill to the above ground fuel tanks at Pearl Harbor, some of which are over 100 years old. Nor does it need to go by the pipe network to Hotel Pier at Pearl Harbor Naval Base to be put into ship fuel tankers. A fast defueling solution is to make whatever repairs to the individual tanks necessary to move the fuel out by a smaller pipe system to the Halawa entrance of Red Hill. The fuel would then be put into tanker trucks similar to the system used at commercial refineries that move fuel from above ground tanks for delivery to gas stations. Fuel would not be pumped down to Pearl Harbor, but instead into 75,000 gallon commercial fuel tankers that would be staged at the Halawa entrance to the Red Hill complex. So, the tank trucks would move the fuel to whatever site is designated. The above ground tanks at Pearl Harbor, Hotel Pier for ship fuel tankers, which could be refueling the RIMPAC ships, or to Par Hawaii above ground tanks in Kapolea that reportedly have a 60 million gallon storage capacity. If there are 50 tanker trucks, each carrying 75,000 gallons, each making 10 trips in a 24-hour period, they would move 3,750,000 gallons a day. With 50 trucks working this schedule, with 3 union drivers working 8-hour shifts of moving said gallons, it would take 27 days to drain the 100 million gallons from Red Hill tanks, not 2 years. So get on it.
Good. Yeah. Like, get that shit out of there. It's got to go.
So even if the Navy would pay for only half that number of tanker trucks, it would take 25 trucks working 24 hours a day, less than 2 months, only 54 days to drain the 100 million gallons. So, and these are the activated carbon filter tanks offloaded at Hickam Air Base, Hawaii. So yeah, if there are not sufficient fuel tank trucks on Oahu, the U.S. military could fly additional tanker trucks into Hawaii, similar to the airlift of the massive granular activated carbon filter tanks that you saw earlier. The fuel contaminated water at the residential tanks that filtered the fuel contaminated water at the residential areas around Pearl Harbor. Yeah, you can send the Band-Aid, but not the actual fix. That's what that is. Helpful hint, in case the Navy have trouble locating fuel tanker trucks, 15 plus are for sale by Opperman & Son Incorporated at 280 Kinley Drive, Healdsburg, California, 95448 855 419 1977. And you know, I'm not opposed to people, you know, like putting this number in their phones and letting them know how they could help the United States and specifically the water of Hawaii. You know, and maybe they'll bring this up the ladder. But yeah, so Ann Wright, the author, served 29 years in the U.S. Army Reserves, retired as a colonel. She was also in the U.S. Diplomatic Corps for 16 years, in U.S. embassies in Nicaragua, Grenada, Somalia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Sierra Leone, Micronesia, Afghanistan, and Mongolia. She resigned from the U.S. government in March 2003 in opposition to the U.S. war in Iraq. She is a co-author of Dissent, Voices of Conscience. Great stuff from her, specifically. But, yeah, I mean, it just, like, at least someone's offering a solution there.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know. Maybe stop putting, like, fuel refineries, like, in places that we like the pretty birds at, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, my dad works in and around that kind of industry as a toba pilot. You know, and you have to have, just for pumping petroleum products of any kind, right? You have to go get, essentially, you have to go to school to do it, pretty much. And like you get what's called a tankerman's ticket, right? And it proves you've done so many hours, right? And you know, because if you look up tanker accident, you know, at any level, whether it's a tanker truck or classically, there's a division of the United States that is specifically made for chemical spill, right? It's some acronym, but they have stuff online, and if people can find, there was a oil refinery explosion in, I want to say, outside of Houston, Corpus Christi, probably, over there on that river, and it's ridiculous. They essentially blew up a square block. Like, essentially. So, like, that refiner, if you think of it like a giant still, right? There's like a blow-off thing, right? Usually you'll see it on fire if it's, you know, like that thing on an oil refinery.
Yep.
But when that's when they're not paying attention, like that's not always on fire, right?
Yeah.
And like usually what it, you know, that's like it's the whole system's pilot like blow off, right? But what happens is, and the reason why they have that one is because like the actual stack you can overflow, right? And there was a whole thing classically of like not testing stuff and like not paying enough workers to you know monitor the thing, and you know same capitalist nonsense. And essentially it was pumping out petroleum fumes, right? Like the actual aerosolized gas, you know, of hydrocarbon into the air, and somebody's truck running ignited all of it. It was ridiculous. Killed like 16, 20 people, something like that. It was pretty fucked up. But I mean, this is like a standard thing.
Bad.
My uncle, who also works on the boat as a tankerman and deckhand, right, has had stuff explosively decompress underneath his feet, right? And you got to like get the fuck off the barge. And like, I don't know if you've ever seen those demonstrations where they like whole thing pressure differential. But yeah, I mean, they deal with some like nitrites and stuff like that. They deal with crazy stuff. And if any of those people decided, like, you know, a couple boats decided to go on strike ever, like just a couple of them, you could stop whole cities. I'm just saying.
Yep.
Like just a couple, especially if you like blockade a river. But you know,